Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Finding the right care provision for the elderly has become a game of Russian roulette. That's according to the charity Age UK. It follows a new report from the Care Quality Commission, which found that a quarter of services are failing on safety. More than 1 million vulnerable people use care services in the UK. Nearly 600,000 get care in their own homes from agencies, and about 300,000 are looked after in nursing homes. Inspectors in England found a lack of staff and errors over drugs amongst the most serious problems. Our social affairs correspondent Alison Holt reports.
Mum, can you open your eyes just a little?
Bernie Jarvis carefully gives her 78-year-old mother lunch. Betty Boylan, who has dementia, is now back with family, but she used to live in a nursing home. The family put in a secret camera because they had concerns, and it quickly picked up the sort of poor care highlighted in today's report. It showed a care worker pushing the chair Betty is slumped in sharply towards a desk. Later, when Betty objects to her top being changed, her head is slammed back into the chair.
No, I don't want to.
Last February in court, the care worker accepted her actions were reckless rather than intentional. She was given a 12-month community order.
Query everything. Don't let them dismiss you, because they did with us for about 8 months, and I wish we would have, pursued it a lot quicker than we did, because Mum, probably wouldn't have suffered the way she did.
Today's report by inspectors says most care in England is good. Even so, a quarter of all services, including home care and residential homes, failed on safety, and 37% of nursing homes weren't safe enough. Also, when re-inspected, quality of care in some good homes had deteriorated.
There's good care out there, we can be confident about that. But what it's also saying is that some of that care is fragile and that it's precarious, and that we've really got to concentrate on making sure that we shine the spotlight on poor care.
At a time when the number of older people and younger disabled adults is increasing, this report raises serious concerns about the quality of care that some are getting. But those at the sharp end say it also underlines the importance of rapid action to sort out how we pay for and organise care in the long term.
For individual older people and their families, they are facing a degree of Russian roulette. Will they get good care? Will they get any care? Will it be affordable? Will the carer turn up? Will the care they go to in a care home be safe? Will there be a nurse in the nursing home? These are such fundamental questions, and it's unfair to expect older people to be facing them at the most vulnerable time of their lives.
This home in South London is rated outstanding.
Good morning. Yes, hello, my dear. Nice to see you.
Jane Ashcroft heads the not-for-profit organisation that runs it. They've done research which suggests a quarter of people still think the state will pay for their care, which she says shows the need for a proper debate now.
If we're still talking about this in 3 years' time, that will be an absolute disaster for people looking for services, living in services, people working in services. We have to recognise this is a crucial issue and move with some pace.
The government says poor care is completely unacceptable, and that as well as putting in more money, it will be consulting on how to place social care on a more secure footing for the future. But the question for many is how quickly will that happen? Alison Holt, BBC News.
Now, putting an elderly parent into a care home can be an agonising decision. The costs can be crippling, and will they be well looked after, happy, safe and clean? According to the Care Quality Commission, in a third of nursing homes in England, the answer is no. Its survey of 24,000 services for the vulnerable highlighted numerous failings, often down to staff shortages. Failings such as people not getting enough to eat and drink, or not being taken to the toilet in time. Jane Deeth has this report.
Victor Edwards went into a care home after a stroke. It left him half paralysed and unable to talk. His daughter was horrified to find he wasn't being looked after.
It was soiled, and it was clearly not just from that moment. It was dried and more on top of it. So it led me to believe that he wasn't being seen to what was said on the forms. When you complain, they would kind of try and make it a bit better, but it would slip straight back down.
Gemma moved her dad. The home, Lennox House, has been put in special measures. Owners Care UK say they apologise unreservedly to families who didn't receive the standard of care they're entitled to. It says it started to make improvements like more carers to give one-to-one support. Green Hive Care Home is rated outstanding. There's dancing, visits to art galleries and trips to the pub. But in other homes, the Care Quality Commission found people were stuck in bed because there weren't enough staff.
They are not being helped to get out of bed at the right time in the morning. They are not having enough food and drink. Their health and well-being is compromised. They're living a miserable life sometimes, and it's just not good enough, and we've got to do something about it.
The CQC has inspected services used by 1 million vulnerable people. 1 in 3 of England's 4,000 nursing homes failed on safety. Nearly 1 in 4 care homes had safety issues, and so did nearly a quarter of home help services.
We're concerned that that means that for older people and their families, they're playing Russian roulette with their care, and that's simply not good enough. It shouldn't be a lottery as to whether you get good care or not.
Green Hive has a member of staff for every resident. The economics are a challenge.
The costs of running a care home are going up. Food costs more, bills cost more, and yet the funding can vary wildly. One council may say they can pay around £800 towards someone's care for a week. Another council may say they can only afford nearer £400. And clearly, some care homes are struggling to provide this good quality of care on that kind of money.
The chief executive of this home's not-for-profit provider says the extra £2 billion the government's giving social care isn't enough.
Because of the challenges in the sector, people are withdrawing services, giving back contracts to local authorities and not opening new services. And I think there are already parts of the country where there is a real lack of quality provision, and that's only going to get worse. Successive governments have said we must look at social care. There have been report after report after report saying the way we fund social care is based in the post-war era and the world has changed.
The government says it will consult on a stable future for social care. The CQC says a quarter of services it once rated good have deteriorated, which shows how fragile the system has become.
Jane Death reporting. Well, joining me now is Aileen Chubb, a care worker turned whistleblower who runs the charity Compassion in Care, and Stephen Dorrell, a former health secretary who now chairs the NHS Confederation. Aileen, can I just come to you first? There are many who will find the CQC report shocking. You, however, are not surprised. You've seen it all.
It's basically, I've heard this for 18 years. Every year they announce a certain amount of homes are terrible and it's not acceptable, and we're going to have a tougher new inspection regime, and we end up with a regulator that's got enough teeth but no inclination to bite. There's also matters where the regulator has actually disclosed the identity of 47 whistleblowers, inspectors at the CQC, to their employers, resulting in people being pushed out of their job. Now, you know, there's an awful lot of talk about retaining staff and that we need to retain staff. However, the very staff that they need to retain are the staff that do not have jobs. They're the whistleblowers. And every day we are dealing with hundreds and hundreds of whistleblowers, and we've actually submitted to government comprehensive reports, which are up on our website. I'd urge people to look, Breaking the Silence reports, and which we continue to gather.
And you feel nothing's changed?
And nothing has got any better. And there's an unwillingness to, you know, to accept the problem here, that whistleblowers are not protected. And to be quite honest, the CQC are re-registering care providers across this country as new care providers and misleading the public. And we've highlighted this as well on our website.
Stephen Dorrell, as a former health secretary, just what is going wrong in the care sector? We've heard this so many times.
Well, I absolutely agree with Eileen that we've heard it over a protracted period. We've heard it in particular, of course, from the CQC. Last autumn, they said that social care was approaching a tipping point. Today, they say safety in too many care homes is fragile. And what's required, I think, is two things. First of all, we do have to address the financing of social care. That's something the government did on a short-term basis in the budget. It provided an additional £2 billion this year. But it set out, the Chancellor stated clearly in the budget, we need to look for a longer-term solution for the funding of social care.
So it's not just about money, then?
But there are two things. As I said, it's partly money, but it is also partly, importantly, about joining social care into the rest of the care system, and in particular, the National Health Service, because the National Health Service can't do its job if social care isn't doing its part.
Yeah, can I just cut in there, actually, a couple of points. Firstly, we did an FOI to the NHS recently asking how many people were actually in bed-blocking beds that had come from a social care setting in the first place. And the NHS replied they do not know. So firstly, that's an issue. Not everyone that's in an NHS bed is somebody who, you know, has come from home. They often do come from social care settings who have failed them in the first place. Second point is I've been in care homes across this country, hundreds of care homes undercover. I've been on 2 care homes on one street. Both of them were rated the same by the CQC. One of them was £100 cheaper. The one that was £100 cheaper was heaven. The one up the road was hell. So it's not just about money, because the money that's invested in social care has been invested in private companies.
OK, well, we'll come to that in a second, but money is important, and under this government and the policy of austerity, things are getting worse.
Well, and the government has recognised the need to address the finance question in the short term. That was where the £2 billion additional spend came for this year. But the government has also recognised, and this is, I think, the important point, that we need to look for a longer-term settlement that does address the need to join social care more effectively into the NHS system. And if I can just pick up Eileen's point, it's actually in today's CQC report that one of the aspects of safety that doesn't get delivered as consistently as it needs to be is medicines management within care homes. Now, if medicines aren't delivered effectively within care homes, that leads to demand either in the primary care system or, in worst cases, in the hospitals. And so we quite often talk about discharges from hospital into social care. That is an important issue, but it's not the only issue. Social care needs to work across the range of social care in order to support citizens leading the lives that they can lead.
Can I get you quickly just to respond to that?
Yeah, I'd just say as well, many of the concerns we are receiving, which have gone to the CQC, families, we see both sides, the families who've lost loved ones in appalling conditions in this country. It's hard, you know, to believe, and I see that every day. And whistleblowers who've lost their jobs because they cared enough to speak out. At the end of the day, throwing money at it, money that will never reach the care workers, they won't receive the money. We are financing private companies who are not delivering the care, and that is the key that we need to look at. Are these companies fit to be paid this money to provide care?
Eileen Schaub, Stephen Durrell, thank you very much.
I've been